بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So I invite you to this session, and in this session we have three speakers. I will ask them to kindly come to the podium. So we have Dr. Asad Zaman. Dr. Shınsuke, and Dr. Ahmet. Assalamu rahmatullah. So our first speaker is Dr. Asad Zaman, and Doctor, you will be presenting standing or sitting. We'll be using PowerPoint.
There is a slides if they have them.
Okay.
Then I will so that I can look at them.
This is the remote.
Oh,
for your easy convenience. So, Doctor, you've got 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Not on. Now it's on. Okay, Assalamu alaikum again, and thank you very much for being here and giving attention. So I will dive right into it because our time is short, and the title is Has Islamic Economics Delivered on Its Promises? So to understand what is the purpose of economics? What is the promise? Well, one of the purposes is to provide policy advice. So, in that sense, conventional economics has been a failure. The most dramatic instance of that is the global financial crisis, where they failed to predict or to provide correct policy advice after it happened. But Islamic economics also suffers from the same problem. They have not been able to provide good policy advice to the Islamic world. Conventional economics, which was implemented and enforced by the World Bank and the IMF, failed to deliver a single case of economic transformation, even though these policies were actually enforced by the World Bank around the world. And there is a book by World Bank itself which acknowledges this failure. Oh, okay. So, the conventional economic theory has not been able to deliver even one case of economic transformation. But communist Russia, China, also the East Asian countries, they achieved economic transformation, and there is acknowledgement by people who have studied this that none of this was based on, these economic transformations were based on ignoring and rejecting conventional advice. But we can say also the same thing about Islamic economics, that it has failed to provide transformation for any of the countries, any of the Islamic countries. We have not. So that's one measure by which in Islamic economics has not delivered on its promises. There is another measure. Over the past 3 decades, a number of new disciplines or alternatives for economics have emerged, and they have delivered. So there is behavioral economics, and they are currently providing policy advice to governments all over the world to change behavior in desirable directions. It's called nudge. There is poverty economics started by Duflo and Banerjee, and they have multi-million-dollar programs running all around the world, and with promises to end poverty. They have been partly successful and part failures. But anyway, they have made an impact on real world. There's environmental economics, which is of course a multi-billion-dollar issue because of the climate crisis. And environmental economics is again very different from and not within the scope of modern economics as it is currently taught. These are a big success. Then there is also evolutionary economics, which has very strong explanatory power about how economies evolve. And this is not a subject which is part of conventional for reasons I'll discuss. There is agent-based models, computational economics. And again, this successfully analyzes complex systems. Modern economy is a complex system. The conventional economics does not have the mathematical capability to deal with a complex system because they treat all the agents as the same. Then there is modern monetary theory, which has explanation of modern system, and it has three goals: zero inflation, zero interest, and zero unemployment. And all of these are Islamic goals, and modern monetary theory provides a theory and an explanation and a policy to achieve these. Again, we don't have anything comparable within Islamic economics. So the question arises, why has Islamic economics failed to deliver? And I have given an explanation of this in my paper on the crisis in Islamic economics, which has also been translated in Turkish. Briefly speaking, modern economics arose after the rejection of God and afterlife and judgment. So it's based on the idea that the goal of life is to maximize pleasure. This is written, this is the first principle of modern economics. The goal of life for every human being, every rational human being, those people who don't do this are irrational, like we Muslims are irrational because we believe in God. So this means that man is just another kind of animal. We live in a jungle of cutthroat competition, and there is only one morality, and that is the survival of the fittest. So the world is governed by, society is built on greed, competition, and individualism. Islam is based on generosity, cooperation, and social responsibility. So in all dimensions, it's opposite. So now the problem with conventional, Islamic economics is that it has attempted to merge these two. They have said that let's take modern economics and adapt it. And that cannot be successful. You cannot mix two opposites. I will explain later why this approach has been developed. So, only about 1 month ago, I've been criticizing conventional economics for a long time. Rajab Hoja has been criticizing me for criticizing economics. But over the 20 years, I have only recently, only in the last month, I have put together all of these pieces into a coherent theoretical framework. And I have started writing this textbook on third generation Islamic economics, and there is a link provided here which gives you the home page and whatever material currently exists on it, an outline and some chapters. So the basic place where we can start building a new theory is from human behavior. So first there is this survey of mine which explains, which just documents the massive amount of empirical evidence against the economic theory which approach to human behavior. So, and why did the economists accept such a theory, such a defective theory of human behavior? That's because they wanted to be scientific. And to be scientific means that, in their view, to be scientific means that you only look at the observable factors. So you don't look at inside the human being. And so they take a mathematical axiomatic approach, which means that the behavior of you and me can be reduced to a mathematical formula. And that has proven to be a failure. So we reject this external approach, and we start by an internal subjective approach, supposedly unscientific. So we say that self-knowledge is the key to human behavior. I know who I am, and this is this has been ancient wisdom across many different wisdom traditions. So Aristotle said that to know yourself is the beginning of wisdom, and there's a saying that man arafa nafsahu arafa rabbuh. But this is said to be hadith, but it's actually a Sufi saying, probably from Ibn Arabi. So this is the wisdom, and basically if we know ourselves as human beings, this leads to a much better, much more powerful theory of human behavior. And this can do a better job than behavioral economics and experimental economics, even though these two fields are now very famous and they are being used to make policy. We can improve upon them. So, so one insight is that we should base our theory of human behavior on self-knowledge. The second insight is that societies are continuously evolving, and this is our lived experience. As we live, we notice that the society we live in is changing in many different ways. This means that modern economics theory of equilibrium must be rejected. Equilibrium is a situation where society does not change. Ibn Khaldun studied the evolution of societies in time from youth to maturity to luxury and decline. And so, because we are going to change the intellectual tradition. We are not going to follow the Western intellectual tradition. Even the word social science, the science part of it refers to a certain intellectual tradition which we must reject if we want to study human society. And so it's useful to name it after Ibn Khaldun, Ulumul Umran. Many other people have adopted this perspective as well. So one of the things is that society is continuously changing, so we want to study the process of social change. The other thing is that economics, politics, society, environment, all four dimensions are linked, and you cannot study them in isolation. So in particular, economic theory cannot be studied in isolation from the other factors. So these two are distinguishing features. So since societies are composed of human beings, so if we have a bad theory of human behavior, we have a bad social science. And so if we create a correct theory of human behavior, we can rebuild the entire body of social sciences from start. And Recep Şentürk has developed multiplex theories of human behavior. I also have some insights into this, but basically one of the things that I want to say is that the idea of science is, which is misunderstood in the West, but according to their understanding, science is about external observable behavior. So they do not investigate the spirit, the heart, the nafs, and all the internal dimensions of man. And because of this, they can never arrive at a valid theory of behavior. So even within economics, there is orthodoxy, there is heterodoxy, there are many different schools of thought, but none of them can arrive at this point. So when we start with the real theory of human behavior, we can really rebuild the social sciences, and the social sciences is the key to rebuild our own society. The theory provides the framework for the society that you build. So if you have the wrong theory, you can never build the right society. So we understand that if societies are evolving, then social theories must co-evolve. They must evolve alongside society. So in chapter 2 of my textbook, I explain how Western economic theory evolved. And basically, it was the result of centuries of religious wars in Europe. Because centuries of religious wars between Protestants and Catholics led the Europeans to realize that Christianity cannot be used as the basis to build a peaceful society. This is very different from the Islamic historical experience. So they said, okay, let's get rid of religion because religion just leads to wars. And so they built a secular society, and these secular societies are built on organizing principles which are antithetical to Islam. One of these is that Hobbes, the first political scientist, said that we cannot rely on internal morality because internal morality comes from Christianity, so let's replace it by the rule of law. So the government is now going to enforce morality. And today, our Islamists have also accepted this idea, and they want to enforce the Sharia from the outside, when in fact the Sharia is a state of the heart, a state of compliance of the heart, the khushu and khuzu. That is the Sharia. The Sharia begins in the heart. It's not enforced. You cannot enforce Iman from the outside. So, that eventually led to the modern economics, which is blind to the nature of man. Now, what happened to Islamic economics? This has also evolved with time. The first generation, in the beginning of 20th century, the economics was, the Islamic world was colonized, and in the 1950s, success, freedom was from political rule was achieved, and the first generation of Islamic economics was revolutionary. It said that Islamic economics provides an alternative to capitalism and socialism and communism. But this goal was not achieved in the 1950s. In the 1970s, the Islamic economists said that political Islam has failed. We cannot capture control, so instead of replacing capital, instead of rejecting capitalism and replacing it with an Islamic system, let's just take capitalism and modify it to be Islamic. So that is the birth of second generation of Islamic economics. Again, it evolved due to historical circumstances. But this idea has failed. Okay, so this idea also failed, and that led to the birth of the second generation. For 3 decades, conventional economics was tried, but it has not been able to produce any new ideas. So the third generation comes from rejecting second generation, and from historical experience that the second generation did not actually succeed in producing anything. There are some useful insights that were learned and absorbed. So now there's a little time left, but what I would like to end with is to say that all of the 6 successful alternatives that I mentioned on the first page, which are all partial insights, and they all come from Islamic perspective. So if we adopt an Islamic perspective and we study economics from the Islamic point of view, we can improve on behavioral economics, we can do better than poverty economics, we can do better than environmental economics, we can improve upon evolutionary economics by using our ulumul imran. Agent-based models are natural for Islamic economics because Allah Ta'ala says, inna sa'yakum la shatta, meaning different people have different goals. Islamic economics modern economics assumes that everyone has the same goal, to maximize pleasure. That's wrong. So an MMT, modern monetary theory, it says that we should aim for 0 unemployment, 0 inflation, and 0 interest rates. These are goals aligned with Islamic ideals. And so all of these things can be incorporated into a single framework coming from Islamic perspective. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So our next presenter is Dr. Shınsuke. He's come from Kyoto University. This is in Japan, of course. And Dr. Shınsuke is interested in Islamic economics and finance. And this is manifested by publishing a book entitled Economics and Finance, Islamic Economics and Finance in Action, Inventing a New Universal Paradigm. So probably we'll be listening to a different perspective this time. And Dr. of course Shınsuke will be answering the same question, whether Islamic economics has delivered on its promise or not.
Can I talk here?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Very kind introduction. So I think that I am the one of the participants who comes from the farthest countries from Japan. So I just arrived this morning after 13 hours long flight. So I'm a little bit sleepy, but I try to do my best. Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay, yes. Yes, so I will start my presentation. So, Islamic economics is a grand alternative movement that has been continuous intellectual pursuit since the mid-20th century, aiming to construct a new economic system to replace capitalism. As a result of the implementation of Islamic economics into actual economies, practices such as Islamic finance, halal industries, and renewed Islamic charitable activities have emerged. And they have made a remarkable progress, not only in the Islamic world, but also in Western countries. In response to the question posed by this question, Islamic economics, has it delivered on its promises? So there are various variations and debates still ongoing today as to whether the ideals of Islamic economics are being reflected in the real practice of Islamic economy. Professor Asad Zaman already mentioned a lot about Islamic economics, including regarding what Islamic economics did or Islamic economics has done, and also from the historical experience, and also mentioning the future of Islamic economics, mentioning the third generation of Islamic economics. That is very interesting point, I think. But therefore, I will take a different perspective, especially the future of Islamic economics for the whole humankind, including non-Muslims. So such intellectual and practical situations can be seen as evidence that Islamic economics is still actively moving towards the establishment of a new economic system that will be alternative to capitalism, involving a diverse range of people. In light of the historical facts that communism, the most significant alternative movement of the modern era, was quarters with the collapse of the Soviet Union at the end of 20th century. It is no exaggeration to say that Islamic economics is currently the most promising and realistic alternative movement in the world. My talks aims to consider the potential of such still fresh alternative movement, Islamic economics, to develop into a global alternative movement that includes non-Muslims. Because I'm not Muslim, and Japan has a very small population of Muslims. So therefore, I frequently asked why I study Islamic economics, because I'm not Muslim. But I have such kind of global perspectives, how Islamic economics can contribute to the non-Muslim people or non-Muslim society. That is my motivation of study Islamic economics. So to this end, I will attempt to translate the economic knowledge that Islamic economics has proposed into a form that can be understood by non-Muslim, and to sublimate it into universal knowledge that can be used regardless of whether Muslim or non-Muslim. To begin with, exploring the universal post-capitalist potential of Islamic economics is an old and new mission for Islamic economics. This is because Islamic civilizations has made a very important contributions to human history, and Islamic economics has a great potential beyond the mere intellectual heritage of Muslims. Therefore, universalization of Islamic economics knowledge is possible. The benefit of universalizing Islamic economic knowledge is that it allows for the comparison with similar economic knowledge in other regions, cultures, and religions. By discovering such economic knowledge similar to Islamic economic knowledge, a global collaboration for the post-capitalism can be realized. The following, using Islamic finance and Waqf as examples, I will attempt to translate the Islamic economic knowledge latent in these practices into a form that can be understood by non-Muslim and sublimate it into universal knowledge that can be used by Muslim and non-Muslim alike. In addition, I will attempt to discover economic knowledge similar to Islamic economic knowledge from the indigenous economic knowledge in Japan in order to explore the possibility of collaboration or solidarity between the two. So since the pioneer days, Islamic economics had advocated a system using Mudaraba as a preferred financial system. Mudaraba is an instrument whereby a lender entrusts funds to borrower and shares in profit or loss, or losses generated by the borrower's business. The relationship between lenders and borrowers in Mudaraba is closely linked as if they are joint ventures. It is characterized as non-anonymous or face-to-face financial system. Furthermore, if we go back to the pre-modern Islamic world, there exists a web of lending and borrowing relationships consisting of countless Mudaraba lenders and borrowers that did not involve banks. It is characterized as a decentralized or horizontal financial system. Although modern Islamic finance uses a banking system in reality, it can be assumed that it aspires this decentralized and horizontal financial system. So in summary, the economic knowledge posted by the Islamic finance can be described as a non-anonymous and decentralized horizontal financial system. And the Waqf is an instrument to distribute wealth generated by the commercial facilities endowed by Muslims to designated beneficiaries. Thus, a Waqf is a mechanism whereby the more prosperous the market, the more welfare is provided to those in need. In other words, the Waqf is a system that perfectly balances the market economy where people do business according to their own interest and social welfare where the vulnerable are cared for. Moreover, this mechanism consists solely of the voluntary private sector without state intervention. The economic knowledge posted by the Waqf can be expressed as a voluntary self-interested altruistic spirit. So needless to say, the Waqf was the institution as the root of the prosperity in the pre-modern Islamic world, and the spirit of self-interested altruism based on the compatibility of the such market economy and social welfare enabled such prosperity to continue. So let us now consider the structure of the problems caused by the capitalism today, focusing on the finance and economic inequality. The most obvious manifestation of the adverse effect of the financial capitalism was the global financial crisis. The cause of the vertical financial order centered on the Wall Street in the United States and the multiple and complicated lending and borrowing relationships from local depositors to subprime borrowers via investors, banks, and US investment banks like Lehman Brothers. When the crisis hit, the original lenders never imagined that their money was being lent to the poor in US. Economic disparity manifests itself not only in the wealth gap within the single country, but also diverse ways, such as the gap between developed and developing countries, between companies and workers, and between men and women. The reason for the lack of progress in correcting economic disparity includes, for example, tax evasion by the wealthy and multinational corporations and various conflicts of interest in the tax system. So these causes of the problem of the capitalism can be summarized conceptually as follows. So the vertical and anonymous and the selfishness and versus altruism. So as you may already noticed, Islamic economics knowledge contrasted favorably with the cause of the problem capitalism, and therefore Islamic economics can be a powerful alternative capitalism. In the sector of the financing, the vertical and anonymous, but Islamic economic knowledge raises distributed horizontal and non-anonymous. And in the part of the economic disparities, the selfishness versus altruism in the cause of the capitalism, problem of the capitalism, but Islamic economics suggests self-interested altruism. By the way, economic knowledge similar to the Islamic economic knowledge we have seen above can be found in other regions, cultures, and religions. In the following, I will attempt to discover such economic knowledge from indigenous economic knowledge. In Japan, since the Middle Ages, various people have formed a mutual aid organization called KO and lent and borrowed money. In this system, people pool money together each term and borrow money in order of need. Such organizations still exist in some areas today. Furthermore, credit union or cooperatives, which emerged in the modern era, have inherited the spirit of the core and provide financial services rooted in the local economy. So these financial practices are characterized by the decentralized, horizontal, and decentralized financial systems. In Singapore Prefecture, where I live, next to the historical city of Kyoto, merchants known as Omi merchants have been active throughout the country since the Middle Ages. Their descendants went on to establish companies that support the modern Japanese economy. The business ethics of the Omi merchant is called Sanpo-yoshi in Japanese. In English, good for me, good for them, good for society. So this business ethic goes hand in hand with a spirit of self-interested altruism. So such economic knowledge, similar to Islamic economic knowledge, is probably widespread in other regions and cultures and religions. The core mentioned above is generally known as the Rotating Saving and Credit Association, in short ROSCA, practices in many parts of the world. So many of them have been forgotten with the spread of capitalism. By discovering and re-evaluating such economic knowledge, so we can create a great swell for the global realization of post-capitalism. Islamic economics, which has already become a major movement, is expected to serve as a catalyst for the discovery and re-evaluation of such economic knowledge. This is the universal potential of Islamic economics that I want to emphasize, especially for the non-Muslim countries. So, by the way, the new practices are emerging from within the capitalism that seeks to overcome the problem caused by the capitalism today. For example, a new financial system using a fintech and sustainable finance and corporate social responsibility and so on. So many of the economic knowledge raised by these new practices are also similar to Islamic economic knowledge. So fintech is a decentralized, horizontal, and decentralized financial system, and sustainable finance and corporate social responsibility are related to self-interested altruisms. So looking at these new practices, is it not too much to say that the time has caught up with Islamic economics? Of course, the new practices of capitalism and Islamic economics differs greatly in their worldviews, and it would be an overstatement to say that they are all alike. However, considering that global community is currently in the serious crisis, so we should put aside all our small differences and unite with others to work hand in hand to build a new economic society. I believe Islamic economics, which is based on the Islamic civilization that has made important contribution to human history, has a great mission to lead such a movement, and that is why Islamic economics is irreplaceable regardless of whether Muslim or non-Muslim. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Shınsuke. Now, the next presenter is Dr. Ahmet Aysan, and he's a professor of economics at HBKU Hamad bin Khalifa University, which is based in Qatar.
Assalamualaikum. It's great to be back in Istanbul. It's always good to be in Istanbul and also in the Yerine events. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. I don't have the slides. I'm a lazy student of economics, Islamic economics. This is one reason. And also, I want you to see the lights on my eyes. So that's another reason. So it works in Turkey. Actually, I was thinking, the good thing about these conferences is that you get a topic and you have to think about it. This is a great thing. Because, academics always work. Even when we sleep, we think about the ideas. When I was thinking about the topic, many things came to my mind, and always there is kind of a mismatch about what we think and what we write. Oftentimes we don't have much time to write, but we have a lot to think, and for that opportunity also I would like to thank the Cihan Numa Forum for that. And I was at the Sabiha Gökçen airport yesterday, and we waited about 2 hours to get our luggages. And I was thinking about the conference, and I said, look, even this is the Islamic economics. Why? Because to do your job properly is part of Islamic economics. The people over there last night, for example, waited 2 hours, and it is owned by Kazana, one of the Islamic finance institutions in Malaysia. And one way or other, there could be lots of reasons for sure, but I thought that one way or another, doing our jobs properly is part of Islamic economics. And it is related with the topic, whether the Islamic economists have fulfilled the promises or not. And then thanks to Cihannuma team, they took me from the airport, they put me to the hotel, and I came back. And then everything was very proper. Again, I would like to thank them. And this is also part of Islamic economics, which you do your job properly and you get the du'as of others, like the prayers. So when we think about Islamic economics in that respect, it is not about Islamic economics in the textbooks. Islamic economics is something that we live in. Islamic economics is something on our eyes, in a sense. So Islamic economics is something that what we deliver as an economist, as a policymaker, as regulators, as academics. When we have the good students, when we become a good example to them, it is also a part of Islamic economics. So this is something which is very important, I believe, because we shouldn't just reduce the Islamic economics to the textbooks or something which came out for about 50 years ago with certain different reasons related with the post-colonization, with the independence and so on. But Islamic economics is always going to be with us, and Islamic economics will be fulfilled. Because if we fulfill something, that means there is a problem there. We solve the problem. Professor Recep said recently, if we solve the problem, new problems comes up. We should live with how to live with the problems. And this reminds me of one thing. And I was an undergrad student. Probably you may remember İzzettin Önder. If you are from Istanbul University, anyone knows İzzettin Önder? Professor İzzettin Önder, nobody knows? No way. Şakir Hoca knows. So İzzettin Önder is a public finance professor. He used to be teaching at Boğaziçi University. He was teaching, we had 2 compulsory public finance courses, and I used to like this course. Still I like the course, because we were not covering anything. We were just discussing about daily things. This is the best course for the students. It is kind of a relaxation from all the other courses. And many of the students used to not attending the class. We were among the very few students attending the class, and we were just discussing with the professors. For the 2 courses, I get AA. And then I said, okay, this is a good course. It is not very demanding. I should take the master version of this course. It was allowed. When we get the 4th grade, we were allowed to get this master courses at Boğaziçi University. And I got that course. I said, okay, this is an easy professor. We talk with him. Anyway, so he talks about the daily issues. I took the course. But the professor, the people who knows İzzettin Önder, he's very famous actually. You should know this person. He's a good professor of public finance. He's a leftist. And then he put this ideology into his classes a lot. And then I was a very courageous undergrad student. I said one day, he was always making some sort of a propaganda of this socialist ideas and this leftist ideas. One day I said, okay, I have been taking his course for a while. I always express my views, but I want to ask even a more fundamental questions. I said, Hocam, one day we wake up, and all the Marxist ideas came about, and then the world became perfect place. It is like a paradise. What are we gonna do afterwards? And then he was very upset. He said, a scientist cannot ask such a question. This is not a scientific question. And at the end of the course, I get BB from the course, unfortunately. It lowered my GPA. So I still remember, I saw him later, and I still, may Allah give hidayah to him. I like him still. We like people anyway, inshallah. It is never late. Inshallah, he will come to our terms. So this is how is it related with the title of this panel? The panel is about whether Islamic economics have fulfilled the promises. There is no such thing. If there is no such thing that tomorrow we will wake up and then the world will be perfect, we will live in an Islamic world. In our childhood, we used to pray like this. Still, in the kindergarten, my sister, she went to the kindergarten and she was saying that Islami devlet, Islamic state, something like that. So it is like we will have the state, we will have something, and everything will be perfect. The world is not like that. Islamic economics is more of an ontological issue, where we are part of this world, but not part of this world. There is always perfection. There is always something that we can progress. And this is quite related with a poem by Konstantin Kafavis. What is it? Let me ask you. What is one of the most famous poem of Konstantin Kafavis on this journey? The life is a journey which is never fulfilled. But the joy of having this journey is by itself is valuable. Fatih Hocam, a very famous poem by Konstantin Kafavis. Anyone? Halim Hocam? No answer. Anyone else? Okay. I will give 10 points. Ülker Chocolate. Hobbies or Tadelle sort of thing. No answer. Among the younger generation. Where are the younger generation? So, how about it? So it is Konstantin Kafavis by Itaki. Right? Itaki, in this poem, it tells us that the life is a journey. We will have lots of problems. We will have lots of issues. But at the end, the life is beautiful because it is a journey. It is not something as an end. So it goes back to my question to my professor. Tomorrow, even we have an Islamic state, even we have adopted all these Islamic ideas, there will be always, our examination in life will continue. Our journey will continue, and this is the beauty of it. And we should enjoy it, right? We should enjoy the difficulties, the beauties, and we will try to see the beauties of this journey, inshallah. That's why this is quite related with the title. We didn't discuss the title of this panel at all, but these are the reflections I have to think about the Islamic economics, whether it has fulfilled the promises or not. It has, and let's come to the, after this introduction, let's come to the, whether it's the answer. Still we can answer these questions. My perception is that Islamic economics have been with us for 50 years. But Islamic economics as a form it has been with us for the 50 years. But there was always Islamic economics, right? In the Ottoman times, even when you go back to, for example, Ayşe Buğra's book on the origins of economics or some origin of economics. There is even Islamic economics before Islam. This is one of my projects, inshallah. I have to write something about it. Islam is always with us, from the beginning to the end, right? Because we believe in the prophets before our prophet, Hazreti Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's why this journey dimension should be there. But in terms of when we think about the Islamic economics, oftentimes we think about the Islamic economics that came about for about 50 years ago, right? All this, you know the history, so there is no need to get into the details. And in there, I have kind of a mixed answer. Islamic finance has delivered certain promises, but not the other promises. First, I have to make a distinction. One, as a field, like academics, like Professor Asad is mostly referring to the Islamic economics as a field. But there is also Islamic economy, let's say, as a practice. And there is kind of a disparity between them in terms of their success. I believe Islamic economy as a practice has delivered a lot. Actually, it has delivered more than what Islamic political thought or Islamic cultural thought, Islamic ideas has delivered in the last 50 years. When we compare these thoughts, politics, culture and so on, what has been delivered in the name of Islam, and we compare it with Islamic economics, in practice, Islamic economics have delivered much more. Right now, we have Islamic banks, Islamic financial institutions. Why do we have them? By the way, also, this is another important thing. How do we define the Islamic economics? Right now, I define the Islamic economics as the study of or the behavior of the Muslim individuals, right? Muslim individuals, government, and so on. So if Islamic economics makes the life of the people easier, then it will cater the needs of the people, will fulfill the promises. So in that sense, right now, as compared to 50 years ago, we have Islamic banks. In Turkey, it is about 8% of the overall banking sector. In Qatar, it is 25%. In Malaysia, it is 50%. But one way or another, out of nothing, we have 0 Islamic banks, zero some sort of institutional solutions for financing and banking, right now we come to this stage. There is no single other thing in politics or in culture or whatever you name in other fields of Islamic movement that we have delivered that much. So there are lots of criticism about the Islamic banking, Islamic economies and so on, but always, you know, this is a journey. That's why I wanted to start with like half of the glass is empty, half of the glass is full. So there is a lot to improve as well, but I believe institutionally as something that we contribute to the rest of the civilization, as our friend from Japan has mentioned. This is something we already deliver one way or other. It is 8%, 25%, or 50%, but we deliver something almost out of nothing as institutionally. This is the practice side, especially in banking, especially in the finance side. We deliver more. But in economics, we didn't probably deliver that much. That's why I gave the example of my waiting in the Sabiha Gökçen airport. This is also Islamic economics. If you make the people, if you don't deliver a good service, and then you make the people wait for 2 hours after a long flight, this is also not Islamic economics, right? Whatever we do, even we produce some furniture ingredients, let's say, or whatever we do, even at the university, if we deliver good products, people will say, okay, these are the Muslims, they do good job, as Johannuma has done, right? So this is also part of Islamic economics, and in Islamic economy part in practice, we do not necessarily did that well aside from the banking and finance, right? In banking and finance, there's a big room to improve, for sure. I mean, this 8% in Turkey is probably quite a minimal amount. But at least in Turkey, when people have the Islamic values and they want to do they want to adjust their behavior accordingly, they have the options. They can go to the Islamic banks. They can do this. There are solutions. This was not available 40 years ago in Turkey. This is a big improvement one way or another. And because the purpose of Islamic finance should be make the life of the Muslims easier. They shouldn't have some sort of a bipolar or disorder where there is something in the theory and the practice does not fit, which we all live one way or another. This is the kind of our destiny, and we will always live this. But if this disparity is too much, what is preached in the theory and what is what is done in practice, this becomes even more of a tension, and then people may opt to different ways. So our purpose as Islamic economists should be to reduce this tension. I mean, what is preached in the theory, there has to be some practical implications, practical applications, and Islamic finance is already delivering this through Islamic banking. But again, when it comes to the regular economy, we have a big room to deliver there. Whatever we do, if we found universities, if you are in academia, if you are in the private sector, if you are doing some businesses, we should deliver our jobs in a way that people will praise this. Okay, these are the Muslims and their Muslimhood is being reflected on what they are doing. And this will be always constant struggle. Going back to the Itaki, this is a continuous journal. This is the practice part, and really, Islamic economists are sometimes very pessimistic people. They don't see the beauty of the life. They don't see the half full glass of the Islamic economies. Alhamdulillah, we have Muzur Kaftar. There are first generation people, second generation people. MashaAllah, they have contributed a lot. And we should really appreciate this because we have delivered a lot in theory and practice. And out of nothing, right now we have something, right? We have something to develop even further. This is our success. And if we this is very much done in Islam because we always criticize. Okay, this is not enough. We have to do more. This is fine. This is a journey. We will always continue to improve, and this is a part of the examination. But we shouldn't make ourselves in a position that it is as if the world is kind of evil. Everything is bad what we have done. We should appreciate what we have done because when you go to the Islamic finance conferences, always they say, okay, this is not enough. We have achieved, but this is not enough, or Islamic banks are not properly functioning. Some of the products are not halal enough or something. These discussions have to be there. But at the same time, we should also appreciate what we have achieved. So on the practice side, I believe there is more room, probably, but at the same time, in the banking and finance, we improve. On the economic side, mashallah, Asad Hoca, I have been listening to Asad Hoca for last 15 years or so. Mashallah, he made a very good presentation. There are lots of criticism. I'm not that critical of conventional economics at all. I believe that economists are very naive people among the social scientists. They think with the models and so on, so that they are easier to convince. But in terms of Islamic economics also, even as a field, as a theory, we developed a lot, but there is much more room to develop. Because there is an issue right now, especially, Islamic economics is trying to be reduced like just only for charity financing or only for social financing. Islamic finance is not about that. Muslims, as Muslims, we have universal messages. We live in this world. We have to have the ideas to say something about MMT, for example. MMT discussion was not about the developing countries. MMT discussion took place, modern monetary theory discussions took place in US. It is about the American policy. Inequality issues are being discussed more in US than the other countries. We need to discuss the global issues. We shouldn't just reduce our discussion to our localities. Islamic economics is not just about Malaysia. Islamic economics is not just about Turkey. There is a universal message, and we have to discuss the global issues in the context of Islamic finance. What is our viewpoint as Muslims? What we think about the sustainability and so on? I believe this is the lacking in Islamic economics. As an Islamic economist, we should be able to say how should be the central banking to be done globally? What should be the policies of the Fed which will impact the poor in some distant place? One last thing. So far, Islamic finance has been having a more top-down approach. When you go back to 1970s, we should thank our, let's say, politicians actually for Islamic finance, not to Ömer Çapra. First, Ömer Çapra didn't come in Islamic economics. First, the politicians, the people who are politically conscious about Islam, about the Islamism, probably, they come up with these ideas. And then they start forming Islamic Development Bank. They start employing Ömer Çapra at the Monetary Authority of Saudi Arabia. So they are the first. But it's same thing in Malaysia. I mean, when you look at the Mahathir, Anwar Ibrahim right now, or Zeti of the governor of Bank Negara. Or in Turkey, I mean, even in Turkey, right? It was more of a top-down where the policymakers, especially when you go back to Erbakan Hoca, it was mostly, first there's a political consciousness and then people start discussing about this. But right now, the period has changed. Right now, we have Muslims living in the Muslim minority countries. There are Muslims living in US. We recently had a meeting at Harvard about the Islamic Finance Conference. MashaAllah, we have guidance residents, for example, where they provide Islamic mortgages to the Muslims in US. This is a big achievement for Islamic finance. It is not a theoretical contribution, but at least they provide Islamic mortgage solution to Muslims living in US with a comparable rate with the conventional mortgages. But they do this Islamically. This is the biggest, one of the biggest actually Islamic finance practices. Then you don't leave the people having a kind of a big tension between, okay, if I go for an Islamic bank, I will give a big premium. So this is a form of Islamic finance solution. So in that, right now, I believe many people are discussing that Islamic finance came to a plateau in terms of the academic publication, in terms of ideas. People are expecting big thinkers like Ömer Çapra or others. I don't think that even the first generation of people were not necessarily big thinkers. They were at the right place at the right time. Right now, the time has changed. Our new generation of Islamic finance people, we do not necessarily should expect individual contribution, big thinkers. A big thinker will come and save us. This is the story of the past. Right now, the story of the future, we should focus instead of the past. That's why we organized a conference recently on rooted futures in Qatar. And in this rooted futures, I believe the importance should be given to the technology. The Muslims have not encountered or have some sort of a fair dialogue with the technology. Technology is developed in the West, and then we just adopt. And the AI, the ChatGPT sort of things are very much at the heart of discussions. We should be involved in these discussions. We have to have this Islamic perspective. And there is a big room for fintech companies. I agree with our friend from Japan that the fintech is kind of a decentralized solution. Like even the cryptocurrencies, the Bitcoin and so on, decentralized finance, decentralized money have to
I believe the summary of these discussions is that Islamic economics in terms of theory is still incomplete. In terms of practice, there is still room for reform and advancement. So I will spare the remaining few minutes for your questions from the audience. So please, if you have any question, please address it to one of the specific presenters. So we have like time for 3 questions only. So yes.
Orhan Hocam. Orhan Koçak from Istanbul.
Thank you very much for your wonderful presentations. I especially want to thank Professor Ahmet Faruk Aysan. What I am thinking is that he emphasized, he told here, what we need in Islamic economics, I think, more than finance financial problems, because we are always talking financial issues, but we don't emphasize more our ideas, our behaviors. You told us something you taught in Sabiha Gökçek Airport. Do you have any model for that? What we should do? If there is a model, I want to hear you. If there is no any model, what can we say? What can we say as an elementary steps for that model? Because we should emphasize it. When we look at the organizations, conferences, we don't talk about Islamic organizations, Islamic production, manufacturing. We need it. We need that. We are living in an environment in which capitalist system is very common. They put their regulations, they put their laws, in which we cannot put our laws and regulations. So what we need more power, we need more production, manufacturing, we need more intellectual property, capacity, but we don't do that. So how we can emphasize those issues more rather than financial institutions? We are always talking about those finance. I want to hear other issues that will encourage us to produce more, to set more companies in real sector and other maybe intellectual property sector. So what do you say? Maybe it is a big, it will take much time, but inshallah, in a short sense, yeah.
Right,
I want to hear.
You very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for seeing the light on my eyes also. This is a very important point. That's why I wanted to start from there. Because when we just reduce the Islamic economics to finance and banking, we are actually somewhat secularizing ourselves. Right? Okay, we do this and our heart is clear. Anyway, Islam is not related with the production that we do in the factories. The labor rights, or even right now, right, the minimum wages will be determined. How do we discuss the minimum wage in Turkey in the context of Islamic finance? Our guys, Müsiyat guys, Ito guys are talking about the minimum wages. Are they referring to anything about the Islam in that regard? Or they are referring to the government policies? So that's why I wanted to start from there, where Islamic economics is more general, and it is related with everything. It is not necessarily about the banking. I completely agree. It is about the factory. It is about, but right now, it is especially right now we have to encounter with this technology. Technology is coming. The metaverse issues, character AI issues, they are all everywhere. So we shouldn't secularize the Islam by just focusing on the social finance part of Islamic finance. We shouldn't just, it should be much more inclusive, much more comprehensive. In that regard, this ethics part will be important. So the solution will not come like, okay, I am having an Islamic factory. The solution will be, we will have strong Muslims. Whatever they do as the exporters, producers, they will really act like Muslims. They will not go to the, their factories or businesses, and they will do all sort of things, and then they will go to the mosque or they will go to the Islamic bank, and then that will be it. We should be, the life should be much more holistic. We shouldn't compartmentalize our life. So it is error. As an academic, we should do the right thing. As Muslims, we should have the dialogue also with the convention, for example, in conventional economics. We shouldn't denounce them in that regard. So I am a bit different in that sense with Dr. Professor Asad. We should communicate with them, and we should deliver our ideas, not necessarily in the form of Islamic economics. For example, when you go to the US and if you say directly about Islamic economics, it might get some sort of a bias. But when you say the same thing in an ethical context, you get more attention. So whatever we do, we should try to infiltrate all part of our lives. Otherwise, Islamic economics will not be really Islamic. Inshallah. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Halim. Thank you for the presentations. We are talking about Islamic economy and modern economy or capitalism. How can we compare these two economies? I mean, should we look at principles or institutions or outcomes? When we look at outcomes like zero inflation, zero interest rate, zero unemployment, Islamic economy is not successful, or capitalism, modern economies seems successful. What is the best way or right way to compare these two economies? Thank you.
So, in my talk I was concentrating on methodology, how to understand human societies. So we start by building a understanding, knowledge, then on the basis of that knowledge we will take action. So I believe that the modern economics has a complete misunderstanding of human behavior. It says that human beings, at the center of the theory is the idea that human beings maximize the pleasure they get from goods and services consumption. So this is wrong. And so if we build a more realistic theory of human behavior, we can build a better theory of understanding of economics. In particular, the goal of economics is to improve human welfare. And so the modern economics does not have an understanding of human welfare. They think that human welfare is maximized if you give them maximum number of goods and services. This is wrong even from a secular point of view. Human happiness relates to social relationships, loving and being loved, not eating more and more. So having a better theory of human welfare, which Islam provides us, will lead to a better theory of economics, better welfare outcomes, not just increased GDP. So I think that's enough.
Thank you, Doctor.
And yes. Very quickly, probably, to Halim Hoca, you are right. When there is this Islamicity index, which is generated by George Washington people, Asghari and others. This has been very much used in the literature also. This Islamicity index, and they look at the more macro variables like the governance of the country, the inflation rate, the macroeconomics, and so on. And unfortunately, the Muslim countries are not necessarily good in there. But the question is it about the theory? I mean, there is nothing wrong with Islam, but in terms of implementation, there are issues. One manner we should accept, by the way, the practice and the theory has to be judged proportionally. One way or other, most of the Muslim countries are the former colonies. Most of the Muslim countries are in the certain part of the world where historically they were not necessarily rich enough. So in that sense, this shouldn't be like what Timur Quran has done, especially he relate the backwardness of the Islamic countries with the Islamic law. We shouldn't make very overgeneralization, but you are right, one way or other, we should work on developing it. And I believe we shouldn't relate it necessarily too much with the Islam. This is about our practices. That's why, as policymakers, as regulators, as academics, as business people, we should all try to be good Muslims, and always we should have this aspiration. Ontologically, Islam is the only hope of the humanity. I agree with our brother from Japan, one way or other. Still, Islamic finance and Islam didn't fulfill all the promises, which is good. It means that we have still the hope. That's why, referring to my what I asked to our professor, so we make mistakes, we don't have to be perfect, and as at the governance level, in the Islamicity index, you know, Muslim countries, the first country that get into that list is coming at the 20th, I guess. I don't know the latest figure, but in the Islamicity index, there is New Zealand, there is Norway and so on, but the Muslim countries are not in the first 20 almost. And inshallah, we should improve on that, but there is nothing wrong with Islam. It is about, Islam is the hope, and that's why ontologically, as an every individual, we should work on delivering these promises, I believe. Thank you.
I thanks to all the speakers for their valuable presentation. I am from Marmara University Institute of Islamic Economics and Finance, Şakir Görmüş. First of all, I mentioned about Ahmet Faruk Aysan mentioned that we discussed like minimum wage or the other things. I mean, if you look at the MÜSİAD or TÜSİAD, maybe they don't discuss, but Istanbul University, Marmara University, Sakarya, Sebahattin Zaim in the or master and PhD course, we are not only discuss the minimum wage, also we discuss like the budget deficit, government spending, tax exemption in terms of the Islamic economics. We discussed this one. Okay, as you said, this is a journey and journey is continued. I have a small question for the Dr. Asad Zaman. I followed his whole study. You said the MMT model, modern monetary theory model, there is three goals, zero inflation and zero unemployment and zero interest rate. And also you said this is the goal for the Islamic economics. I agree that, but I have a small, not the small comment for it. Also, I want your comment about it. Like in Islam, if you say the zero interest rate is the goal, this means we accept the interest rate. Because if interest rate is zero, this means in Islamic economics, interest rate is in some point like 2, 3, 4, we try to reduce it zero. But still there is the interest rate. So here is maybe the goal of the Islamic economics should be not zero interest rate, but no interest, no riba. What's your comment about this one? Thank you.
To me, this seems like a semantic issue, but actually, maybe it's a deeper issue. What we want to have is a currency which is stable, which is, in fact, I think Imam Ghazali mentioned that one of the characteristics of the problem with inflation is that, and interest is that money is a unit of measure. It's like the ruler, you know. It measures things. The money measures the value of something. So if the ruler is flexible, then there is no stability to the measure. So if you are getting interest, then one lira is worth 2 liras 10 years later, then there is no constancy in the value. So maintaining a stable currency is one of the requirements of Islam, and that means no inflation, and that means no interest.
By the way, MMT people are crazy people, Şakir Hocam, so we shouldn't follow them as Islamic economists.
So with this we come to the end. Sorry, we don't have much time left. So we come with this to the end of this session, so please join me in thanking Dr. Ahmet, Dr. Asad Zaman, and Dr. Shınsuke. Thank you so much. And the moderator. So please stay in the auditorium because we immediately proceed with the following session, which is OIC report. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we will right now not have a break, but we will proceed with the next session, which is a 24-minute spotlight, and then we will break for lunch.